I like Manuel singing along there. Thank you. Welcome, Low Ego Action Heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from DeltaCX.com. We're a full service CX and UX consultancy doing projects, consulting, and training. And I have to apologize again that I am having a bit of an off internet day. We had some tough internet moments yesterday. We are entering into our rainy season here, which means our internet gets really ugly really fast. We have four internet connections in the house right now, and one of them seems to be not working, so I'm already on the backup. We'll see how that goes, and I apologize in advance for any blips or sputters that we have, or if my frame rate is a little bit off. I know that my streaming system is set up to sacrifice video to keep audio, so I may look a little bit Mr. Roboto in places. Hello, Elvina, and thanks, of course, to everybody at all action hero levels. I finally changed the graphic. Who is donating to the channel at all three levels are junior, mid-level, and senior low ego action hero members in the order in which YouTube sent me a CSV. So believe it or not, they couldn't do special characters. I had to fix characters in there. Come on, YouTube. But thanks to everybody. I definitely ate some chocolate chips today, and you pay for those, so I'm very grateful to all of you. So today is Office Hours Ask Us Anything. We do have a special guest. Hey, Darren. Yeah, Debbie Headroom, exactly. But. Don't forget to ask your question at deltacx.com/links. You'll find a way to ask anonymously, or you can ask in the chat, and we will ask these questions of our new friend, Greg, who I call Greg Marinelli. But Greg, I've got to move this so your face doesn't get covered with all this. But while I move that, tell everybody who the heck you are and please spell your name.
Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Marinelli. That's Greg, G-R-E-G, and last name Marinelli, M-A-R-I-N-E-L-L-I. I am a UX research manager at JP Morgan Chase. I've been there for a little bit over 5 years now. I currently lead what's called our consumer banking products research team. And this is just Chase speak for checking and savings accounts. So the way to think about it is me and my team do all customer-centric research for checking and savings accounts for the largest bank in America. It's a crazy job. It's a fun job. And I love the folks that I work with and the folks that we learn about. Before I joined Chase, I have a bit of an eclectic background and what many might consider a non-traditional UX background that I've talked with Debbie about. Hi,
Yep.
Darren. Good to see you again. And I've talked with Darren about this too on LinkedIn. So I am a JD MBA, which means I have a law degree and I am a lawyer. I don't practice actively, but I could in theory. I have an MBA with a focus on entrepreneurship and studied design thinking during that program as well. And I come from the startup world as well. So previous to Chase, I was working at a startup medical cannabis company in Honolulu, Hawaii. So I've had an odd eclectic background on my way to UX research, but I'm very proud of what me and my team do now. And I'm so excited to be here joining you, Debbie. This is fantastic.
Yeah, it was great, absolutely great to meet you. And once I met you, I was like, holy cats, we got to get this guy on the show. So thank you so much for making some time, especially American Thanksgiving week. And I do want to clear up for everybody, since, we roast design thinking a lot here. And when I first spoke to you, I was like, oh no, this guy says design thinking. He's a fake. I must admit, I went into it with some biases and some preconceived notions, but you've got that definition that to me sounds more like human-centered design. Tell us about how you see design thinking.
Yeah, great question. So you and I have talked about this before, and I think primarily I'm going to start with the mistake that I think most people make with design thinking, which is thinking about it as one series of steps that you must follow in order to get to an outcome. And it's not, right? You talk about this, Dr. Fine talks about it on your show, Darren talks about it quite often. It is about understanding this full exhaustive process and putting the needs of the customer first in that process. However, it still requires understanding business needs, engineering needs, marketing needs. But it has to start with what is the core, you can start with jobs to be done, right? What is the core need of the customer and how do we solve from there? It requires involvement of the customer or the user in understanding their context and their setting. And in theory, should also involve them in identifying the right way to solve that that pain point or revel in that opportunity. So while you hear very often about the 5 stages of design thinking, and certainly that's a great way to talk structurally about what is often, in essence, yes, the scientific method. Right, what we're doing is trying to understand context and take that context and apply it in a way that will be most useful to those that we've learned about their context. That is my long-winded way of describing design thinking.
Which to me sounds
And if I'm
like
getting applause from
user-centered.
Darren,
Yes, Darren's clapping. It's so at least you didn't say UX UI, other because that Darren has no.
no,
Darren can't take it. But and he
no,
doesn't have
I
to.
know,
But yeah, to me that sounds like customer centricity and user-centered design. And
of
so we
course,
just have to double check when people say design thinking. What do they mean by it? Because sometimes it's good stuff, but
yes.
not often enough. All right, let me put up our first question that came in ahead of time. It actually came in our Slack community. And by the way, if y'all want to join our online communities, they are completely free. Unlike some other communities I won't name, you are welcome to join our Slack and or our Discord. Our Slack is quite active. Our Discord seems to attract introverted gamers who don't want to post. So our Discord is much quieter, but it exists. deltacx.com/links will send you there, and that's the same URL to use if you want to ask an anonymous question here today. So the question that came up in our Slack channel was, does being a mixed methods researcher give you more leverage in terms of job searching? And what would you recommend for educational resources to start learning quant user research? And I said, ooh, let's add this to today's show because I'm pretty sure that our guest is hiring for a mixed methods researcher.
I am. Wow, and what a timely question. What a great question. Uh, and I have to start, as any good answer from a researcher does, with a big old "it depends" here. So, does being a mixed methods researcher give you more leverage in terms of job searching? It really depends. In theory, the needs of the people that are hiring should be specific and pointed. A good hiring manager should have an understanding of what it is that they're attempting to accomplish by hiring somebody new. Oh, I love the explosions. Fantastic. Um,
Thank you for subscribing, Jamar. Everyone, please subscribe. More explosions. Sorry, go ahead.
more explosions. No, it's okay. You always have to pause to thank the subscribers.
We should.
So if a hiring manager is doing their job correctly and posting about their job correctly, it should identify for you the skill set that they're looking for. And the reason that I start with that is it's because it's really important to understand what you mean by a mixed methods researcher. People mean, just like design thinking, I think people use the term mixed methods researcher to mean a lot of things without really understanding what it is that they're looking for or what it is that they are. Right? Somebody who you can utilize mixed methods without being a mixed methods researcher, full stop. So for example, many folks on my team are highly trained qualitative based researchers, but are still proficient enough to study data that we have. They are still proficient enough to launch surveys and analyze those surveys in a robust way. But their expertise, broadly speaking, I'd say might be 80% qualitative because that's what their training is in. That is what they're most proficient in. And so I wouldn't call that person a mixed methods researcher. Similarly, I am, for example, right now trying to hire somebody who I've labeled as a mixed methods researcher. But as I lay out in the job description, what I'm really looking for is somebody who has quite a number of quantitative based skills to incorporate into a largely qualitative based team. but I've identified this person as a mixed methods researcher because I do want them to have some understanding of qualitative skill sets. I'll get applications, for example, from people who are data scientists, which I think is a different role than a qualitative UX researcher. And they might have fantastic quantitative skills, but they have either no experience with qualitative UX research or don't really have an interest in learning that space or wouldn't understand how to upskill those folks. And so it's really important to identify who it is that you are as you go into your job search. I've given a really long-winded answer. Let me do a bit of a TLDR here
Well, and
for
then
this.
recommended educational resources to start
Yes.
learning more quant.
Yes. So really quick, if you are marketing yourself as a mixed methods researcher, it is critical that you be very explicit about the different types of methods that you use and why you feel like that qualifies you as a mixed methods researcher. If you are somebody who has done only in-depth interviews for your entire career and one time created a survey, good hiring managers, and you try and sell yourself as a mixed methods researcher, that will be detrimental to your job search. If, however, you are a mixed methods research, I think that is very valuable right now, as especially larger companies are really trying to bridge the gap between quantitative and qualitative data. Let's talk about resources for learning quantitative. Um, Gosh, I gotta look at my library. There are some. You know where I would start, actually. The best thing that you can do if you want to up your quantitative skills is to read multiple books on survey creation and survey methodology. It is, just as I would say interviewing is kind of the bread and butter now of most qualitative UX researchers. Survey and survey analysis and really rigorous data analysis in surveys is kind of the bare bones of quantitative or mixed methods researchers. And so there are a number of great survey methodology research books. I'll have to pull one off my shelf while we're talking so I can point it out. There's one called Mixed Methods down here. From FarmCat. Thank you. That is a good book. I will say that's a great starter book. But I find that when I read through Mixed Methods, I think you'll probably need more resources after that to truly be considered an expert or subject matter expert in that space.
Cool. Thank you. And if anyone has follow-up questions, let me know. We heard from FarmCat. Good to see you here. Darren says, great point. Some folks don't realize how complex survey science really is, and that folks can actually get a degree focused on surveying alone. Yeah, you wouldn't know it from all of the surveying and marketing tools out there that, and that statistical analysis is important in, especially in advanced academia. Okay, we do have
Yes.
another
Can I
question.
give you? I
Yeah,
looked it
please
up.
do.
I have
Okay.
one book for you, really quick, Debbie. So here's my book recommendation for you. It's called Thinking of Answers: The Application of Cognitive Process to Survey Methodology by Sudman, Bradburn, and Schwartz. So
Thinking
one more
of
time, it's called
answers.
Thinking About Answers.
Thinking
Yes.
about answers. Okay, thank you for
Thinking
that.
About Answers. Yes.
Now, of course, if I can be exceedingly cheesy, I too have a book recommendation. And it is my upcoming book, which will be released in a week and a half. This, of course, is a proof from Amazon. Yes, I managed to cut 40 pages off of it with a little margin help. So it'll be a little thinner than this, and not as long as my last book. Good news, everybody. This one's a little more readable. So yeah, don't forget, Customers Know You Suck is available for pre-order now on Amazon as Kindle. It'll be available in Kill Tree's version on December 2nd, when we'll be having a live stream to celebrate it. Darren says, I've heard about that book. Customers Know You Suck. Yes. It's mine. It's mine. I'm so excited about it. Okay, our next question looks like this. What's the difference between design thinking and double diamond? Ooh, we've opened the design thinking Pandora's box. Okay, Greg, you want to field that one?
Okay, let me give this a try. So what's the difference between design thinking and the double diamond? How pedantic do I want to get here? So the double diamond, it's a great question though. The double diamond is a framework. It is a visual representation of one thought about what design thinking is. Gosh, that was so pedantic. The double diamond is a visual representation of how to think about design thinking. And earlier, when I was talking about design thinking and how design thinking is sometimes seen as a series of steps that must be followed rigorously, I think the double diamond is one of those visual frameworks that oftentimes embeds in folks' mind that this is the step that they have to take and this is the process. Um, I think that's what I would say on those.
Yeah, and again, there will be. I forgot to tell you before the show. We can. It's okay for us to disagree. Sometimes giving people different angles on things helps them
Yeah, please.
sort it out. Yeah. So my answer would be that human-centered design or user-centered design is kind of the grandma of it all, and that double diamond and design thinking, and someone just made up a triple diamond, and someone made a triple diamond with two circles, and and more design thinking light and whatever seem to be just derivatives of these. And they're derivatives that just tend to focus on different lengths of the process. I tend to feel like most design thinking definitions, though not necessarily Greg's, tend to look at like how short and fast can we make user-centered design in some sort of speed over quality environment. Double Diamond tends to be a larger derivative of user-centered design, where it's got a lot more of the original tasks and steps and questions. Ultimately, I like original flavor user-centered design. I'm not into the derivatives, but again, if any, as we say on the Friday show, if any of these are meaningful, actionable, or helpful to you, then, give it a try and see how it works. Sorry that some things might cover Greg. Um, all right, yes, let's move on. We have
And
a
I don't
question. Oh, go
disagree
ahead.
with you, Debbie. I think you're exactly right there. I
Oh,
think
thanks.
that they are different things, but yeah, absolutely. But that's what I was trying to get at with it. It's just a visual representation as well, right? You could draw it a double diamond, you could draw it a triple diamond, do extra circles, but
Yeah, I draw it as a bunch
folks are
of
trying to get it
arrows, though I've got a new
right.
version that I forgot to make for the show. The new version has a seventh arrow that says post-release monitoring, which should really be
Yes.
there. I suck for not putting it there, but I need to redo this graphic. So, on the to-do list, but I'll get it right in the book. Okay, we've got a question from someone with a very fun YouTube name, Shy with the Curls. And I will just call you Shy. And Shy says, I've been watching your task analysis series. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what we're talking about here, there's a bunch of videos on the Delta CX YouTube channel. Won't you please subscribe? And they're in the micro lessons playlist, and they have to do with task analysis, which can be compared to jobs to be done. And again, like double diamond versus whatever, I tend to prefer task analysis over jobs to be done between two similar methods. Okay, so that sounds like the question is going to be about task analysis. And it says, sorry, it's not coming up. I pressed the button and it's not coming up. So I'm just having a funky internet day, but it'll come up eventually. My question is, could you conduct a usability test for a website and then also create a task analysis as well, or is it not recommended to do both? Greg, is task analysis in your arsenal? Can you feel this or
Yeah, I mean, my so my work tends to be much more generative, and we're more strategic in nature and don't tend to focus on task analyses, but we do heuristic assessments, we do usability tests, and so I'd say for my stance here, again, I think these are related things. I would just go back. Gosh, what a reacher thing for me to do, to answer a question with a question for somebody who maybe can't answer the question. But I would say, why do you want to do them both in the first place? Are there separate research goals or outcomes that you're attempting to achieve? Are there separate questions that you're looking to solve? And if there are distinctly different questions to solve, and you feel like a task analysis is the method to use to accomplish one of those and not for another one of those, then you should use the methods that are most appropriate to solve your research question. But I would not. It's an interesting distinction to make here. How do you feel about this, Debbie?
I do have feelings here, but I also am juggling the questions that are coming in the chat, and we just
Oh, I'm
got one
sorry.
coming in. No, this is what I do. Don't be sorry. I have to do this all the time. Okay, I see the anonymous question that came in 4 minutes ago. I'm going to add you to the questions list. You will be after this one and before Manuel's question. Now we're getting cooking with evil gas. All right. Let's flip back to all of the things. FarmCat says, I've reached my limit. Have a great day. Okay, thanks for dropping by, FarmCat, and
Hi,
for your
Farm
kind
Cat.
donations to the channel. And I should mention, I do know who FarmCat is, but we allow FarmCat some anonymity. Okay, so since you're watching the task analysis series, and that's definitely my wheelhouse, Larry and I are writing a book about it. We hope it'll be out in the first quarter. Could you conduct a usability test and then also create a task analysis? So what if I can channel Larry for a moment, let's get the appropriate graphics for that. Ooh, if I could channel Larry for a moment, what Larry would probably say is that a task analysis is made from observational research. And he would probably tell you it is not from usability testing, because with usability testing, you're testing a concept or design that you already have, which means you think that's the solution or it might be the solution, and you're just having people run through that potential solution to see if it solves your problem or where it could be improved. It is a necessary part of this complete breakfast, as the American commercials say, but it is not an appropriate task analysis, because chances are there are many steps and aspects of the real task that don't happen in your system, or don't happen in the version of your system that you're testing. You might be testing a new design with people. They've never seen it before. It's not part of their native task. So ultimately, the research that you need to do to generate the task analysis is going to be that early generative solution agnostic research, whether you call it exploratory or discovery or behavioral, whatever you want to call it. I'm not going to fight anybody today on nomenclature. You want to make sure you are watching people in their natural habitat doing whatever this task is, whether that's with your system or competitors or no system. Maybe who saw my LinkedIn post today that my mother-in-law has taped a paper rectangle to her phone so she could tell when the phone was on the table which side was the top of the phone? You know, now she's got an aspect to her task that we are not going to know if we don't let her use her equipment in her environment. So remember that chances are your task analysis is not going to come from usability testing, because you're forcing people to use a particular concept or solution. I hope that helps. And if you have follow-up questions, let me know. Anything to add to that, Greg?
No, I think that that's perfectly stated as I was trying to get across, but you did much better. It's really important to just understand what you're trying to get out of the research. And I think these are both completely valid methods. You're just trying to accomplish two very different things with them.
For sure, totally agree. These are both really important and should be done, but you're doing them at different times for different reasons. So thank you for a great question. Next question says, after analyzing research, how do you gather insights and recommendations? I'm often confused when facing this part of my research phase. Ooh, Greg, short master class, or how do we answer this one?
Ooh, yeah. Well, again, I mean, not to be too pedantic to start again, but the analyzing your research is part of the process of identifying insights and recommendations. I mean, those are linked. Um, hey, another subscriber.
Thank you. They
Thank
love you,
you.
Greg.
Uh, I don't know why I'm saying thank you. Thank you on behalf of Debbie.
And thank
Continue
you
to
from
feed
me
her chocolate
too.
chips. Yes. So when you're analyzing your research, the reason that you're analyzing the research is to gather insights and recommendations. And so that my only quibble with this is that it's not after you analyze the research that you start thinking about insights and recommendations. It is part of the process. So let's talk about, you're faced with this part of the research phase. How do you accomplish it? Right? The more systematic and methodical that you can be, the better. I would encourage you, if you're not familiar with kind of best-in-class tagging and coding and theming processes for analyzing especially qualitative data, that's critical. I think one of the largest mistakes that I see, especially in junior or new UX research portfolios, I often ask them about their data analysis process, and I hear a lot of affinity mapping and just general kind of clustering of, I wrote down some thoughts that I had from the interview and I clustered those thoughts that I had from the interview. Great, that's fine, but better, robust data analysis would involve transcribing these interviews that you've done, for example, going through and tagging, coding them, identifying themes based on those tags and those codes in a way that you often see out of really rigorous academic research that we're trying to make sure is more and more included in industry-based UX research now. Because I think I'm sure Darren would be one of the first people to tell you this. A lot of boot camps, for example, the only sort of data analysis that they teach their folks is cluster some post-it notes together, and you've analyzed your data. So I think taking a methodical approach and being very robust about it is the best way to avoid confusion when you're going through this research phase. Did I miss anything, Debbie?
I love that answer. And I was just talking to one of my apprentices yesterday. No, don't write to me about my apprentice program. It's closed, everybody. But I was just talking to one of my apprentices yesterday, and I was saying, each step of your analysis and synthesis has to set the next step up for success. Just like your research planning should have set up your sessions for success. Your sessions should set up the next part for success. So now you're doing your coding and tagging. Now, again, not sponsored. Let's roll this out for a moment. I use Dovetail for this stuff. Not sponsored. I pay them. They don't pay me. But I do like their transcription, which is mostly accurate, and then coding and tagging. And then I can easily turn it into some video clip montages, like here's 6 people who hate our checkout. But the tagging and coding now is your start at finding those themes and patterns. And then you can bring that into your Miro board affinity diagram. And then you're starting to synthesize, which is just fancy Greek words for putting stuff together, putting together the pieces of the puzzle. And now you're saying, okay, I looked at each person individually. Now I'm bringing together all the people I met from that group or set or segment. And let's see where there's interesting stuff that only one person said or lots of things people had in common. So remember that each step should be setting the next step up for success. Great tagging and coding helps you go right into that affinity diagramming. Great affinity diagramming will be the gateway drug to making a great report or presentation or whatever you tend to do where you are. And remember to include, as Dr. Ari says, your point of view, your recommendations and suggestions. You're not just a journalist reporting the facts. You are a consultant and strategist, even internally at your company, saying, what do we make of this and what could we do about it? So there.
Love it.
Um, oh,
Love
Darren
it.
has a follow-up question. We'll throw it in quickly, and then we'll get back to the other questions that came in order. Darren is asking, oh, and Manuel says, I used Otter for transcription, but it doesn't work well with some Nigerian accents. Yeah, I
Mm.
could see that. It's true. Certainly a lot of services right now are expecting American English, British English, Australian English, sometimes South African English. So I am not sure of a good company out there, but there's a, startup, someone make better transcription for non-English and English spoken with a Nigerian accent. Darren says, I love Descript for transcription. Larry and I tried it 2 years ago and we hated Descript. Not necessarily for its transcription, but for other things. But again, maybe after 2 years, it's worth giving it another try. So again, tools are tools. Everybody give them a try. Find the one you like. I'll put up Darren's follow-up question, and then we'll get back to the questions in the order in which they came. Any thoughts about or affinity for the AEIOU framework?
So I will admit my knowledge on AEIOU framework is not extensive. So I don't know that I
Me neither.
have. I'll be very honest with you, Darren. I don't know that I have enough information to have a significant affinity. I think I might be able to name what all of those things stand for, but that would be about the extent of my knowledge. Is it activities, environments? There we go. He's got it for me.
I'm Googling
Interactions,
it.
objects,
Yes.
and users.
Activities,
Okay.
environments, interactions, objects, and users. This almost sounds like
Okay.
object-oriented adventure. Okay, Greg, any thoughts on this?
I think we use it when we're not thinking of it in that way. Yeah, that's kind of my reaction that I'm having now too, Darren, is this seems like it seems like just one of many frameworks to organize your thoughts and help you categorize what you're seeing. So I would say, as far as any affinity that I have for it, I am in full support of any sort of framework that can help researchers be systematic as they go through data and think about what they're seeing in an organized and logical way. I don't know that I would be a proponent of it over other similar methods or frameworks, but I think that if it works for the researcher and they are able to use it consistently, then I don't have a strong negative reaction to it.
Try it and see if it works for you. All right, I'm going to move
Yes.
on. This was Manuel's question, or one of them. Do you think niches in design play any role in hiring? For example, enterprise UX designer, VR designer, etc. I'm more of a generalist.
Well, that's a great question. And sorry, I missed the name of who asked it,
Oh,
but
Manuel.
fantastic. Manuel, fantastic question. I think niches can play a role in hiring, but I think it really depends on the level that you're attempting to be hired at. I will speak for my UX experience has been with large companies, so I can only kind of speak to that classification. For example, at JP Morgan Chase, we are looking mostly for excellent design or research or content talent. And then oftentimes kind of try and find the best fit or the best team for that person that we can utilize their expertise. But just because you've been doing enterprise work does not mean that you are forbidden or any less of a designer when it comes to consumer based work. We hire folks all the time who don't necessarily have a true subject matter expertise in that space. What I will say, though, is you're a generalist, so you probably don't have to worry about this problem as much. But if there were somebody who were a specialist, the further that you specialize in that thing, the more it plays a role in your ability to get hired. So if you are a VR designer and that is your bread and butter, and that's really the only thing that you do, yes, it might be harder for you to get a design role that is not VR specific. But as a generalist, uh, I don't think that you'll run into that issue. I think that right now there's enough people out there who are looking for good design talent who have core skills in things like critical thinking, which I know is a highlight of this channel. Right? If you have good critical thinking skills, if you have good understanding of human-centered design methodology and human-centered practices, then I think being a generalist is completely appropriate, and you can space that fits with you.
And I always say specialize if you want in the things that make sense for you. We do have some people in our community who do specialize in VR, who do specialize in enterprise. They that's where they want to work, or that's where they keep getting hired, and that's
Mhm.
their world. I end up getting a lot of e-commerce and SaaS, but that's mostly because I end up getting a lot of e-commerce and SaaS, and it's just accidentally kind of fed on itself. That's kind of ended up an accidental specialty, though I've done some things in banking and healthcare and whatever. So, Manuel, just keep doing what you're doing, and if you end up with a niche, you'll stumble into it, or you'll fall into it, or you'll go for it, and otherwise you'll just be like many of us, just taking the work that matches our strengths.
Mhm.
Wow, the show's more than half over, so I'm going to put up the next question. I know. A question based on Dr. Ari's last show. Yeah, that was last Wednesday. Should UX designers learn marketing and business in order to learn more about business and how to deliver UX ROI? What do you think, Greg?
Well, you're asking somebody who has a law degree and an MBA if folks should learn more. I am predisposed to say yes here. I'm not sure what Dr. Ari's stance on this was, but I think that everyone involved in the UX community, designers, content strategists, researchers, should all spend some time understanding the basics of business practices, marketing, engineering, perhaps. Just some of these basics, if only so that you can bond and communicate better with your partners in the way that you work. Um, Oftentimes, it's not even about your work product becoming better. You won't learn about marketing and all of a sudden see your visual designs get exponentially better. But what you will do is you will learn more about marketing, or you'll learn more about business, and you'll be able to ask more impactful questions of your stakeholders and your partners. You'll be able to present your information in a way that resonates with them, that uses their terminology, that pays tribute to the goals that they are attempting to achieve. I often get feedback in my own work. This is one of the reasons that I think folks enjoy working with me. Although I am in a very creative space, working with lots of creative people in design and research, much of my work is translating this great research and these great designs to folks who are concerned primarily with business priorities, business metrics, marketing metrics, engineering metrics, and being able to empathize and contextualize their needs is just as important as empathizing and contextualizing the needs of your end user. Um, that's what I would say to that.
Yeah, and sorry, we do get follow-up questions about other shows, and you're like, I didn't see that show. Now what do I do?
That's okay.
So thank you for riffing on it. That was a great answer. I certainly agree. I do think, and I've been calling for this for some years, for people to be more aware about even the basics of business.
Mm-hmm.
Like Greg, I have a not traditional UX background. I have a bachelor's in music, and I have an MBA, and some of you know I'm a classically trained opera singer, and so I came into UX after working in the New York City music business. So but I got the MBA last year, the year before, but it felt like stuff I already knew by then. But I think it's number one, it will answer the question that many UX peeps ask every day, which is, why doesn't the business care about the user?
Yeah.
Now, in reality, the business cares, but in its own twisted, wacky way. And if you understood more about how businesses run, how they make money, how they lose money, why their stock goes up, why their stock goes down, then you would understand some of the decisions that right now you might see as ranging from nonsensical to unethical. And I'm not saying they're not nonsensical or not unethical, they might be both, but I think that if where people understood more about business, we would, UX gets accused a lot of not speaking the business's language. And we think that means call people into more fucking workshops. And let me be clear, when people tell you you're not speaking the business's language, they don't want to be invited to a design thinking workshop. They don't want to be invited to a design sprint. They want you to change some of the things that you're saying and doing to be on their level. They're not saying bring me
Mm-hmm.
into your world. They're saying get into my world. So I do think that Darren says that should be a t-shirt. Why? You're 40 seconds delayed. What should be on a t-shirt? I'm making t-shirts right now. I need to know. Um
I think it was you don't need another fucking workshop.
yeah, that could be. I'll write that down. Um
Okay.
uh and then I have to
And I
decide.
think that's a completely, don't you think, Debbie, that's a completely appropriate thing for your partners to ask you too? I think in the UX community, we've asked so much in the last couple of years of business partners and marketing partners to understand our world and our space and adjust the ways that they work to take a more user-centric model. I think it's completely reasonable for them to ask in return for us to understand their context and their space. And just as the designers and researchers and content strategists attempt to learn about their end user and their customer, they need to have that understanding of the people that they're working with and their goals as well. So I don't find their asks unreasonable most of the time.
Totally
Most of the
agree.
time.
And I think to me it should be part of onboarding. Onboarding shouldn't just
I
be
agree.
here's our company values, here's how we pretend we care about minorities or marginalized groups, and here's how you log in to get your email. It should also be here's how this company makes money. Here's
Mm-hmm.
what butters our bread. And what butters our bread is when these people do this. And we tend to lose out when people don't do this, or we lose this group, or whatever. We should really, part of onboarding should be a better understanding of how the business operates, because it will explain decisions that to many UXers don't make sense. Like I've worked at places where the core KPI that every UX team was expected to deliver on was make people press that button more.
Yep.
And of course, as a UX person, or someone with empathy, or whatever you want to say, you're going, I don't want to make them press that button more. And maybe our research says they hate that button. So why are we doing this? And that's where you have to peel away the layers of anger and disconnection and say, wait a minute, someone's got a reason for doing this. I should understand what it is. Even if I disagree with it or want to push against it, or whatever, I still need to understand this first.
Absolutely. 100%. I think that's one of the first things that I do with my team when they join us. I've especially this year, I've had so many folks coming out of academia joining my team, and they don't know financial services. And one of the first things that we do is sit down and say, how do you think we make money? Let's just talk about that. What are all the different ways that this bank makes money? Because that was actually 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago. Somebody asked me that in my first interview with Chase, and it was so interesting. I've never asked that question before, and I found it intriguing. Someone just sat me down and said, "My first question for you is, how does a bank make money?" Um, and like, what an interesting interview question, I thought at the time, and in retrospect, it's only grown more interesting to me because it is essential that yes, you're getting covered up by all the questions. It's essential that people who want to understand the user experience also understand how the company makes money in the first place, because our goal is not right. You have the Venn diagram and the triangle for a reason as your logo. It's not just about desirability. It is about making sure that the customer need can match up with the business need as well.
Yeah, remember, we can also roll out this triad with a
There we go.
triangle: people, systems, context. We've got that one as well. We've got many circles here, free circles, all the circles you can eat. Okay, let me put up the next question since we've only got 15 minutes left, and we are so grateful you're here. The next question says, what parameters do we need to take into account in defining problems?
Wow, what a broad question, Debbie. Let me see. What parameters do we need to take into account in defining problems? So I think I'm going to have to assume some parameters to your question in order to answer it properly. We've spent most of the day talking about research problems and design problems. So I'm going to assume you are trying to figure out, you're trying to scope a new research project or a new design project. Um, the parameters that you should keep in mind, right? Just as we talked about, first and foremost, what is the need for the customer? Who is the customer or the user, which is an incredibly important parameter that often gets missed. Right. Oftentimes companies will just say, we need a better experience for this feature. Well, who is that better experience for? Is it for all of your customers? Is it for a specific subset of that customer? So defining what the problem is and who the problem, whose problem it is, are important parameters. Time, resources, money that might be involved, the business need, right? We just spent a lot of time talking about what is the need of the business, the product team, the marketing team, the engineering team. So understanding the parameters of the business, do they need to make a decision, or is this informing their roadmap or their budget, or are they trying to hit a certain metric? Those are key parameters that you need to take into account. So let's see, to recap some of the things that I mentioned, right? Resourcing, time, money, people, scope, so that can mean the problem to be solved or who we're solving it for, and then outcomes. So those are metrics that you're looking towards, issues that are that need to be solved for, decisions that need to be made. Those are, I think, in my mind, the most important parameters to take into account.
And I take this question a little bit differently. So it's not that I disagree with you. I'm wondering if this person means, how do we define the customer or user problems now that we've done some research? And of
Oh.
course, we have a chapter on that in my upcoming subchapter on defining the problems. So I think that for a problem statement, I find, and this is going to be a bad answer, so I apologize, but I find that when you've done really good research, the problem statement will jump out at you. I find that when people haven't done the right research or used the right methods, they come away and they go, I'm still not sure what our users need or what they do. And I go, okay, so it sounds like maybe your research plan didn't help you know what you're looking for, or your sessions didn't really follow your goals. And so you asked questions, but you didn't really get to those goals. So I find that when it comes to defining the problems, we want to be able to write a statement that is relatively short. It's not going to have everything we know about the problem. We can refer people to our other artifacts or documentation. But we want to be able to say kind of a short version of the very short version of who, what, where, why, when, and maybe how. The example I give in the book is I talk about a problem I had trying to update my credit card in a company's system. And because you couldn't update your credit card, the system actually closes you. When your card expires, the system closes your account. And when the company finds out that you have a new credit card, they create a new account for you with a new account number, which means they have to send you a new card with the new number on it. It was so maddening, it of course made the book in multiple chapters because it's a great example to kind of carry through the book. So what's the problem statement there? Many customers have credit cards that expire. They want to keep their account updated in our system, but we currently don't allow that. We close their account when their credit card expires. This taxes our customer support system. Now, notice I'm talking about the problem, and this is some parameters that I recommend. I'm talking about the problem from both the customer or user's perspective and what's going to mess things up for the business, what's going to waste time, waste money, lose customers for the business. Hey, we closed their account. Not everybody is going to go open the next account, and we could lose people there. And we're also taxing our customer support system, which costs a company time and money, which we talk about in the book. And this is hypothetically an option for self-service, but to me, a problem statement doesn't start talking about the solution. I don't say, and the solution here is people need a page that looks like this with this and do this. When we get into solutioning, we can look at some of those things, and I go into that. But the problem statement, it helps us clearly know, first of all, it should help us prioritize stuff. And second of all, it should help us understand from the customer's and business perspective what's going wrong and how does it affect all involved. Short version. That's what I'm thinking. Greg, what are you thinking? You're smiling and laughing.
I mean, I think that that's fantastic. Yes, we use oftentimes a why statement, or we have what we call internally a why template, which is essentially a series of questions that helps us define a customer problem. But a core component of that process is always evaluating not only the customer issue, but the business issues that can be remedied or improved in that process. And again, getting back to, should designers or researchers or content strategists understand the business and marketing? This is another really important reason to do that. Because if you show up to your partners with a problem statement that just says customers are having a hard time getting a new credit card without restarting the whole process. Yes, it's a customer problem. We get it. You get it because you understand the context and you dove in deep. But other folks don't understand that full context. And it becomes so much more powerful when that customer statement becomes, customers can't get access to a new credit card without initiating a brand new application, which also results in, 30% increased customer support staffing and 2% additional attrition, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and I offer a way to map that out so that with your problem statement, you can start mapping out. Oh, Greg looks a little frozen. I hope he will blip back in shortly. Greg, frozen? Hello? Hopefully, Greg will rejoin us in a moment. He looks strangely frozen. I will just take him off the screen until I see him blip back. Sorry about that. Hopefully, I'm still live and on the air. Let's go back to Stella's question. Stella, thank you so much for subscribing today. And let's throw this question up there. Hopefully, Greg will come back and be able to answer it. If not, I will jump on it. And Stella says, hello, do you have any advice on setting a research repository from the ground up? Where do you start and what should be the next steps and how to maintain it? So one of the first things that I think has to be done with a research repository is first to figure out what software or system you're going to use, because there are many different pieces of software out there. Some people are using Confluence or SharePoint, Dovetail, Enjoy HQ, Aurelius. There's a lot of different tools and systems. Oh, good, Greg is back. We can tell him where we were. Greg, our question was about starting a research repository from the ground up, and I only got as far as saying you're going to have to start by picking what tool you even want to make it in, but that's as far as I got. So what's your advice for creating that research repository?
Absolutely. Let's start here. You can hear me again?
Yes, I do. Thanks.
Everything okay? All right, perfect. Sorry, I don't know. My entire camera just went black. Had to restart it. Anyway, research repositories are great questions, and it's something that we have a lot of experience with in Chase, and we've just implemented this year really a incredibly robust research repository. But it's also, customers know you
Oh no,
suck.
Amir asked
What's
what
the name
the
of the
name of the
book?
book was,
Yes.
so I'm just answering that silently while you talk. So much for that.
Okay, that's okay. Well, you got to plug the book when it's being held up.
He asked.
Everyone go buy Debbie's new book coming out soon.
Thank you. You're very
Research
sweet.
repository. So the first thing that I can say is to pick to do your due diligence on vendors and what your needs are from a research repository. I heard you, Debbie, talking about Confluence or SharePoint and those type of sites. We tried those in the past. A lot of companies have tried those, and what I've heard is what often ends up happening is they are not searchable. They're
Right.
not really organized in a way that is usable. They are essentially, they become a Dropbox folder full of research reports, which is fine. That's one form of a repository if that is your goal. If you are a small company that does not produce a massive amount of reports all the time, that may be sufficient. You may be able to go and comb through that on a periodic basis and find things that you need. But if you are part of a company that is producing massive amounts of artifacts, you need something that's more systematic. You need something that's more established. The other, so second, there are, I don't remember the names of the books off the top of my head, but I would encourage everyone to Google for books on research repositories, because there are 2 or 3 really good books on setting up research repositories at large institutions and medium-sized research institutions from people who have done it. And then finally, the third thing that I would say here is that as you are looking to implement this, the most important part of the research repository is making sure that there are tags and systematic processes in place to make sure that your information can be found regardless of who is using it. Do not assume that the person making your research repository and organizing it all is going to be part of your organization forever. Do not assume that the people posting information into the repository are going to be there forever. And you need to really you should provide strict guidelines and guidance for how people need to input that information and how it's to be stored.
Yes, and
Discoverability is so important.
yeah, I wrote that down and I'm so glad you covered it. And I'll just add to that by saying it that the last job I was at, I was going through their Enjoy HQ trying to find all the research that had been done on a particular project, and nothing was coming up in my searches. And finally, after going wild, I went to the researchers and I said, "Why isn't anything in Enjoy HQ about this?" And they said, "Oh, no, there's a lot of stuff, but it's under the old project name." And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, "I just started here. Metadata. So the magic word is metadata." Manuel, we're kind of out of time there, but we've got one last question from Amir, and then we're going to have to run. We might be out of time. So Amir says, suppose in a learning product, such as LinkedIn Learning, we interviewed 10 users and we found they were confused about how to find the courses they wanted. How do we know if it's a real problem? This one hurts a little, I think.
This one hurts a little.
It's a problem.
Yeah, LinkedIn Learning is a problem.
Well, they're saying this
I don't
is
know that we.
he's saying imagine that the product is like a LinkedIn Learning, but he's saying they interviewed 10
Oh, I
users
see.
and they were confused about how to find courses they wanted. How do we know if that's a real problem?
I see. Well, the first thing that I would ask you is how many users said it was a problem, and how do you know that users were confused? Did you ask them if they were confused? Did you observe confusion? Did they click on the wrong thing a number of times? So when you are presenting these findings to whoever you will be presenting to, I would encourage you, this is a mistake that a lot of folks make. I would encourage you not to say things like, we interviewed 10 users and users were confused. That's fine, but it's much more impactful, right, to say, right, we were observing these users and 70% of them misclicked, right? They clicked on the wrong thing, or they could not find the thing that we asked them to find. And maybe you don't have it at that level of specificity, but it would be great if you do. So first of all, I would say in order to know if it's a real problem, you need to understand where that confusion came from. Second, we can talk about sample sizes and whether 10 is an appropriate sample size to understand, how valid these findings are. But typically, if you're doing a thorough and robust interview with 10 users and you're doing some sort of observational interview where they engage with your product, if you have a significant portion of those 10 users expressing deep confusion, I would say it's probably a good chance that there's some sort of systematic problem that is creating that confusion, and it's not by chance. You could run, statistical analyses to see how close is this sample to, being statistically significant. But with 10 folks, you're not likely to get numbers that you'd want to show to a data scientist at that point. Debbie, does that resonate with you?
Yeah, bit. Yeah, I think the thing that I was thinking is, first of all, I agree with what you said. It really depends on how you conducted the research and how you learned this, because you can definitely skew your research by asking the wrong questions or doing things in the wrong way. So I agree with you. Like, this should be observed behaviors, not, hey, did you find what you needed? Because sometimes people will self identify as things going or better or worse, usually better, but better or worse than they did for whatever reason. So if you observed 10 out of 10 people not able to find what they wanted, in addition to what Greg said, I would probably be also looking for the details or granularity. Remember, I'm task analysis person, so I would be looking at what did they do? Okay, they went to our search bar, they typed in whatever. Our search results were a lot, a little, incorrect, bad metadata, um, showed them things we were trying to feature that had nothing to do with them. What were they doing at each step, and how did it work well for them or not work well for them? Did they end up trying to put band-aids on their own situation with tools or workarounds or something else? So I think that more details around it, because as we were talking about in a previous question, you don't want to end up just saying, hey, we interviewed 10 people and they're having problems finding courses. You can't just stop there. Everybody needs to know the detail of this for us to understand that problem definition. And so we have to see, is this related to the metadata? Is it something in the information architecture or interaction design? So it's your job to have observed that and to be able to articulate what that problem is or what the tasks looks like in more detail. Chances are it is a real problem. So I would say definitely don't write anything in research artifacts or reports that tries to play it down. Never say it's probably good enough. Never say let's just release it and see how it goes. Companies love this stuff, but I don't think that's a strong CX or UX approach. So if you're seeing something that's a problem or a potential problem, say it. Be strong about it. Express yourself. This is you doing your job. But I know some people come from cultures where they feel like, obviously I'm East Coast American. Greg, you might be East Coast American. And very often we feel like we can kind of say it the way it is. And there are obviously people from other places who might be like, oh gosh, oh, I can't tell people let the research speak for you. You don't have to say, I think this is a flaming disaster. Say, hey, here's some quotes from the people who tried to find the things. This is what they said. And that might help you more, if your culture or personality make you want to not deliver the bad news so directly. Greg, anything to add to that?
Let's see. I'm reading Darren's comment. If someone said they interviewed 10 users and then presented something that could be discovered via quant study, I'd be concerned. Would
I would
expect more
expect more
depth.
depth. Right, right. It has
Yeah,
to be more like we asked 10 people if they liked this and they said yes, and which of course sounds completely flawed to begin with. But yes, I think Darren's agreeing that we need a lot more of that depth and detail.
yeah. I think that
Um,
word interview is what he's sticking on there, right? If by interview this person meant that they actually sat along and did right a contextual inquiry and watched these people use their product without prompting and observed a lot of incorrect behavior or confusion, that's different than saying I interviewed 10 users and they said they were confused.
so true. We're running a little late. Do you have a few more minutes for us? I don't want to make you late to a meeting.
I do, yes,
Oh, thank you so much.
I do.
Okay, we had I missed one follow-up question from Manuel earlier, and I get the feeling I'm pronouncing Manuel's name incorrectly. So I'm going to ask him behind the scenes on that because I've been saying it wrong probably all year. Um, but recommendations on books around business and UX.
Business and UX. Sorry, I'm staring off into the yeah. Customers know you suck. So that's the only book recommendation that we have right now.
You're very
I'm
sweet.
looking
Thank
at
you. I have heard some good things about
Let me pull.
D.MBA. Now, it's not a book, it's an online course, and I don't think it's cheap, but they definitely, their D.MBA tries to teach designers business stuff. I don't think it's a
Mm.
book. And again, it is on the expensive side, but I have heard, and I haven't taken it myself, so, and not sponsored, but I have heard some good things about that. Excuse me, that program. Darren says +1 customers you know you suck will cover that. Well, sort of. Yes and no. We'll talk about that on the December 2nd stream. Greg, anything on your shelf?
Let's see. So the things that I have on my shelf, this may be less related to business, but is just, I mean, this is something that I consider required
Oh yeah,
shelf having the universal methods of design.
that's a
This
good
is
one.
less related to business and UX, but I think this book does a very good job of talking about different methods and how they could be applied into the business perspective. Um, and then one other that I reference quite a bit is the convivial toolbox. I don't know if anyone. So this is generative research for the front end of design. So this
Hmm.
talks broadly about um, a lot of strategic research and has sections in it that talk about why this sort of strategic research hits at the confluence of business needs. And so I think that there's some good stuff in here that can help folks. Um, I think that's what I have for now.
All right. Well, then give me one moment to close out as we normally do to let people know what's coming up next on the show. Um, I love how much universal design shares how much effort is associated with each method or technique. Yeah, definitely recommended book. There will be no show tomorrow so that we don't overlap with Darren Hood's UX Chit Chat Hour. So make sure you're attending over in Darren's world. Friday might be critical thinking, but y'all have only sent in one thing. So if I don't see more stuff, we might postpone that show. Next week, Monday, is Think Out Loud. Nobody sent in anything yet. So send something to deltacx.com/links for a Think Out Loud project for Monday's show. Tuesday, the 29th, a week from today, I'll be doing Office Hours Ask Me Anything as I always do. There will not be a special guest. Wednesday, I'll be reading the Medium article that I published a few hours ago. On the suggestion of some of you, I wrote an article on meaningful, actionable, helpful, which is kind of our little model here for critical thinking. So I'll be talking about what that means and how we can use it to be better critical thinkers. December 1st, of course, is the first Thursday of the month. So it is our fun networking hangout, kind of like Darren's Chit Chat Hour. Ours is now being held on Remo. We're moving away from AirMeet. So we'll see everybody there. There's no cost. Just join the Slack or Discord communities, and you'll find the link in the live events channel. And then December 2nd, book publishing live stream celebration. So I hope everybody will join that. I'll be taking questions about the book. I'll be reading some excerpts from it, and that day it should be fully available for sale in print version. I am still editing the audiobook. The audiobook will be ready closer to Christmas, but I have recorded all of it, which is why the microphone is not at my desk. And I probably need about 12 full-time days to edit it. So, yikes. But endless thanks to Greg. Greg, thank you so much. I hope we will have you back on the show again for another reason. Any last words, or where can we find and follow you on the socials?
Absolutely. Well, first, it's been a pleasure, Debbie. I really appreciate the invite. Thank you for everyone for participating and the great questions. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, Greg Marinelli on LinkedIn. It's pretty easy to find me. Again, that's Greg, Greg, and last name Marinelli, Marinelli. There'll be a JD MBA at the end of my name on LinkedIn, so that one's
That
me.
guy.
I would I would say one last book recommendation is at the confluence of UX and business practices is Tom Griever's Articulating Design Decisions, which is a pretty popular book going through the UX community right now, but does a good job of explaining kind of how designers and researchers and content strategists can learn a little bit more about business principles and apply them into that style of working. And then the last thing I would say is if you are a researcher looking for a job right now at a large company and think corporate finance and consumer finance and banking is the place for you, again, reach LinkedIn or look at JP Morgan Chase careers page. We have probably about 20 research openings alone right now. I'm not as involved in the design content strategy hiring, but I'm sure that we have many, many openings in those spaces as well across a wide array of domains and disciplines. We do research on everything that you can think of, not just checking and savings accounts. We're focused on trust and privacy and security. We're focused on mobile versus web interactions. There are teams that do research on the branch experiences. So everything that you can imagine would encourage you to send in a resume and apply.
Sounds great. And you seem like a great person to work for and with. So I hope fans of the show will send that in. Darren says, I hope they go back to offering more remote openings. Yeah, I guess Darren and I can't apply. Womp womp.
Yes. Sorry, Darren.
Sad
I
trombone.
do too, but that is, no one's asked for my opinion on that one yet.
We feel you on that one. All right, so I'm going to play us out of here and do a lot of waving, but hope to see everybody tomorrow at Darren's Chit Chat Hour. And then if we don't have a show for the rest of the week, we'll certainly see everybody next week. Greg, thanks again, and lots of waving. Good night, everybody. See you soon. Bye.
Good night.
Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are